go till about 11, if that's all right. Because it's a really esteemed panel. This is Arra, I'm going to say it wrong. Yerganian. He's the chief brand officer at Tivity Health, and he'll tell you a little bit about Tivity Health in just a minute. Brent, you know. This is Manoj. Raghunandanan. Perfect. Yeah, I practice. I have to practice a lot. He is a VP of Consumer Marketing at Johnson & Johnson, J&J. We have Barbara Shipley, who is the Senior VP of Brand, Chief Brand Officer at a little organization called AARP. And then we have John from, sorry, my brain just went out.
Englehart.
Yeah. There you go.
HSS.
You had that right.
Yep.
And he's with HSS here in New York. And he's also the Chief Marketing Officer. So we have a very esteemed panel, and I just want to start with a question for all of you, and then we'll kind of turn it into a free-for-all. But Brent kind of laid out the situation. And my question is really this. What the heck is wrong with marketers? Why did they not wake up to this? Why did they not understand that there's an opportunity here? What are they missing? Your organizations have all figured it out. What do you think's wrong with the rest of kind of consumer marketing world that they don't get it? So I'll start with the consumer marketing guy, Manoj.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate being here. I think the point that you're making could actually be made for a lot of groups, right? I sit on the Alliance for Inclusive Multicultural Marketing with the ANA, and I think a lot of people would argue, hey, how come marketers don't get the Hispanic marketing environment? But has such great buying power, and they need to see something personalized and specific to them, or the African American target, or the LGBTQ target, and these are important targets. And I would argue that we probably need to make a lot of progress in those areas as well. It's not just here. I think there's an overall lack of understanding, right? So we always say that in those markets and in this market, quite frankly, what is it, something like $8 trillion of buying power, 80 million people in the U.S. alone. I mean, there's a lot of impact that you can have in the marketplace if you're focusing on these people. And I think it applies to other markets as well. I think sometimes, what happens is, quite frankly, is people, they're unable to prove the value. Right? You see the demographics, but they're unable to prove the value because all these great tools that you've talked about for measurement and all the data and analytics that we have today. Ask a marketer how easy it is for me to show somebody, like your CFO, directly that I have moved the needle with these particular consumers and delivered this kind of value for our corporation, delivering this bottom line profit. It is incredibly difficult. Today's digital marketing, specifically, in that marketplace, as you probably all know very well, to get the reputable data that you need to prove is often difficult. I think the thing that's helped a lot, quite frankly, is macro consumer need for two things: convenience and personalization. The greatest unmet needs that will, I think, last for a very long time. And now personalization has gotten more marketers on track with, hey, I can't talk to New York the same way I talk to Chicago. Well, if that's the case, I certainly can't talk to an embracer the way that I would talk to some of my normal consumers, and I need to find a better way to do that. So I think a lot of it, is applicable in multiple subsegments that have great buying power. First, the lack of education and understanding of the buying power, I think, is the first step. The second step is your ability to clearly prove. Now, I will tell you what recently happened coming out of a McKinsey study that was done, the BCG study that was done, is about how diversity actually matters and does drive the bottom line. Those are the first quantitative studies that have ever been done on those topics, and they just came out in 2015, 16, and 17. The first quantitative study that diversity actually matters and drives the bottom line. So I think there's a little bit of that education that happens. And then, not for nothing, you got to have marketers that have the courage to do it. Right? And I think sometimes in big corporations, what happens is there's a little bit of a CYA mentality and playing in the middle of the road and trying to make sure I get the guaranteed wins, and the willingness to step out and say, no, this is an important segment, I'm going to make this choice, and I'm going to prove that it works, is not a risk that everybody's willing to take.
Let me get Arra to weigh in and tell us a little bit about Tivity Health. Most folks may not know about it.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. It's great to be with you all. So, in a simple phrase, Tivity is helping to solve two massive problems that are affecting our society: social isolation and loneliness. And if you think about the average 65-year-old today, there are now 11,000 people a day aging into Medicare and Medicaid. And they, though, represent $3 trillion in buying power, as we've discussed and described. Yet so many of them feel alone. And it's interesting, the other cohort of individuals that are suffering from social isolation are millennials. And the device that actually separates them from life is that phone. Yet the device that connects so many older Americans to life is their phone. And we're finding that at Tivity Health, the audience that we serve primarily really is connected through mobile, through digital, and actively engaged in life when they participate in organizations like Silver Sneakers, where people come together to exercise and feel healthy and feel engaged and connected. In fact, the reason we're so successful is because the 68 health plans out there recognize as well that if in fact you're active, you're mobile, you're not socially isolated, you're engaged, you'll literally cost the health plans about $1,608 less per year. So there's a real bona fide benefit. We just actually published a study that came out yesterday with the MIT Age Lab that shows that those involved in these exercise programs and just engagement with friends are typically 25% less likely to be socially isolated. And this is a chronic disease. In the UK, for example, they just announced about 9 months ago a minister of loneliness. And she was the butt of late night jokes when Theresa May decided that they'd announced this great movement. And Tracy Crouch, who's the minister of loneliness, took on this role because they recognized that 9 million people in the UK, literally the population of London, are chronically lonely. That number translates to about 46.5 million people here. To your earlier question, I wanted to also say, and you brought it up at the very end, I think most marketers are generally afraid. And they act sadly like sheep, and they'll follow whatever the trend is that they see today. And it's no fault of their own. The average tenure of a chief marketing or chief branding officer in the U.S. is less than 18 months. And believe it or not, every CFO and every CEO is put you under a microscope and evaluating whatever you do based on the latest accomplishment you have. And there's really very, very little margin for error. So we've got to change that paradigm, I think, for those in our field to feel more courageous.
I think we'll get more. I will tell you that the best advice I ever heard was the company is going to wake up to it when they have enough pain. When the bottom line is not moving, and the demographics are pretty evident, we're not growing the under 50. The under 50 is going to be the same every year for the next 20 years because we're going to birth the same number that moved from 49 or from 50 to 51 or whatever. So it's just moving. It's just moving. We're not really going to grow.
I think there's another thing that is interesting when you say afraid, and I agree with that. But there's also, and I'm so glad that AARP is working on this program against ageism, not for ageism.
We debated it.
Because in many ways it is the last ism, and it's huge. And a lot of the progress that took place where marketers ended up with Hispanic marketing budgets and African American marketing budgets, a lot of that had to do with being politically correct and doing what was right. And it didn't come out of necessarily at the time, as I lived it, them looking at that's a huge market for us. It turned out to be a huge market for them. But it wasn't, it came about much more out of we should do this because there are groups that are saying it should be done. And there isn't a group really, short of the AARP saying it's time to do this. It's time to stop putting the two guys playing checkers on the beach in the ad, or 2 Super Bowls ago there was a hilarious ad about a group of seniors who couldn't hear the commercial about the show. It doesn't make any sense anymore. You can't do that these days.
Our thoughts on?
Well, I think I have a slightly shorter answer to your question, which is that for some reason, when people turn 50, marketers now all of a sudden think that they're older people. And why aren't they just people? And these are people that you've been probably marketing to for decades. And there is really nothing magical, except for the AARP, at 50. And I think that's part of it is, I was thinking about what you were presenting earlier, and I think what you were talking about was more the whole physical nature. We really push back on, and I think you guys do too, that whole 50 is the new 30.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, 50 is the new 50. And to recognize that people don't want to be insulted simply because they've had that birthday. It just doesn't really make any sense. Do you live your life like that? Does Tuesday just turn into Wednesday, and Thursday turn into Friday, and you had lunch and you had dinner? And there isn't something all that magical about 50. So we, as marketers, tend to then start to look at you as frail, now you're vulnerable, now you're needy. I think that was one of the best things, is that you don't really want anything, now you need things. And I think that it doesn't just start with the marketers, it starts with the product developers. So, one of the things that you've mentioned a couple of times is we have a program called Disrupt Aging that was a signature rallying cry for our CEO. And it's two-pronged, and it's not complicated. It's not easy, but it's not complicated. It's challenging outdated beliefs, because almost every picture that you all laughed at was because it was based on an outdated cliche. So it's challenging outdated beliefs and sparking new solutions. We need new solutions. People are going to live to 100 on your chart, whether they want to or not. And our research said that a lot of people didn't want to. It was a very scary thought. So there's a whole continuum here. It isn't just the marketers. Where are the products? Where are the solutions? Where is the car where the front seat swivels out? So it's just easier for everybody to get in. That car doesn't exist. It used to. I think they made a car like that like 30 years ago, and they don't make it anymore. Everybody would like that car. So we need to be thinking about the entire continuum. It's not just about the marketers. And then I'll just say one more thing, and then you need to jump in. I think there's something else at play, and I even think that we saw it in some of the ads or the marketing that we did like. The guys playing chess on the beach probably wouldn't have been as offensive to us if they hadn't both been older people.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think we don't pay attention to enough, and this is what I think you were picking up on what we talked about the other day, is that for some reason we just don't include older people, but then when we include older people, they're only with older people. Older people only hang with other older people. It's like a ghettoized thing. That's ridiculous. Everybody wants to hang together. Older people don't just want to club with other people their age. You have a question?
Yes, so I was recently at the ANA Master Circle conference in Orlando, and they were talking a lot about their See Her campaign. And is the equivalent existing within
Absolutely.
AARPs, where they offered free to advertisers and marketers the ability to you could send them a spec campaign and they would review it from the standpoint of, is there a sexist or a racist or another, is there some innuendo here that you were not intending as marketers?
Right.
Does the equivalent exist in the ageism world, and where is it?
It is something that we are looking at, and we have started working with. We started with Adweek. We're actually doing stuff at Cannes. We're working with the creative environment, the creative community, the marketers, the advertisers, and the product developers to really start to kind of raise the consciousness. I want to make sure I get a chance to get in here.
No, I again, nice to be here. Thank you for having me this evening. I agree with everything that everybody has said. I think they're phenomenal points. I think the only thing I would add is I think a lot of times what drives things is what you measure. And one point that was touched on earlier, but I would underscore, is the whole short-termism that's going on in marketing. And I think one of the things that organizations and marketing people and the CFOs that are investing in it are so focused on short-term horizons that they're focused on consumers where there is perceived at least to be a greater receptivity to trying things. And I think something that we're learning, and my business and brand are a little bit different because of the nature of what we do, but younger people are generally more receptive to trying things more readily. They're less thoughtful about stuff. But so too are those relationships that much more dispensable. And so a lot of it comes down to what you measure and the value of the customer relationship that you're measuring. So I think also, and that might help then with the tenure of the average tenure of marketing executives as well. If you take a longer term horizon and look at lifetime value and how you can earn that. And if you can focus on that, the value that you can unlock in a more mature 50-plus consumer.
So I'm struck by something, and I agree with everything that you just said, but I think there's also a sensitivity to, are we potentially making the same lumpy kind of assessments about millennials? All millennials aren't going to act any one way either. And so I think that there's maybe what this does is raise our consciousness to just recognize that not all of any one group is going to do anything the same way. There are plenty of people of all ages that will try new things. I have a 25-year-old, and I was struck by, she said, you know, I'm breaking up with all these marketers that won't stop emailing me and texting me. I can't stand it anymore. I thought, God, you sound so old. So I had to catch myself because I thought that they all wanted that, right? We all think that they want. She's like, I can't take it anymore. I don't want that. I don't want marketers and brands and companies. They're sending me stuff I don't want. So I think that there's a different kind of sensitivity to recognizing the personalization, you talked about it, recognizing them for who they are, not just what year they were born in. There are demographic trends, but I think that's the next spot for the marketers, is to recognize that we're talking to people. We aren't talking necessarily to generations. One other thing on the ages, do you mind if I pick on you for a minute? Since you're
I'll be the representative.
So I won't ask you if this has ever happened to you, but my guess is if it hasn't happened to you, you know somebody that it's happened to you. What's your name?
Theo.
Theo. So, you know, hey, are we sure we really want to put Theo to lead this project? He seems kind of young. That's ageism. And we're making an assumption about Theo because we have one data point about him, his age. We don't know how much schooling he has, we don't know how much experience he has, we don't know what projects he's worked on, we don't know anything about him, except we think we know his age. And we are very quick to make a judgment. And every day we do that in our agencies, we are being ageist. And that is part of what we are also doing in Disrupt Aging, is making sure that we basically say, it's really not good across the board. You have to know more about somebody than one data point, which is just their age.
I would agree with that, except for the fact that I would say that everybody in this room, when they turned 50 and got beyond 50, that their thinking changed in a way that's very, very hard to describe and very hard to understand. And I think that part of it is we are biologically kind of against age, right, as humans, right? I mean, yes, we want to keep living, but we like that everything works and that we're young and that we're cool and all those kinds of things. And what's really hard for, I think, a 30-year-old or a 35 to understand about aging is that you are now at a time when the window is closing, right? That's a very difficult concept to understand, right? I've got so many years left, right? When you're 30, and it's natural, you're like, I've got the rest of life. It's going to go on and on and on and on. And I think it's very hard. I think that, yes, I don't want to be ageist in the reverse, but I am to a certain extent, because I think it's the same thing as me saying, I can understand by reading data points what it is to be a Hispanic American. I can't. I just flat out can't. I can read about it all day long, but for me to write advertising about it and marketing about it, it's not the right way to do it. I'm just saying that's one of my issues is that agencies have been wiped out of anybody over 45, unless they're a manager. They don't exist there anymore. And I think it's very hard for a group of people to understand what it is to be, truly to be older. You can look at it, but I see mistakes made all the time. I'll give you an example of commercial, pretty good commercials for Medicare Part D. I don't know who did it exactly, but there's a hedge maze, and it's all about Medicare Part D, and there's a giant tractor, right?
AARP.
And they go through, well, there could have been one key element changed in that I think an older group would have figured out. And that is, instead of having the young girl drive the tractor, let the older couple drive the tractor and be in control of themselves and what they're doing. Let them knock down the hedge. And I think that a 55 or 60-year-old person would have said, that's better. As opposed to let the 28-year-old drive the tractor, because you can't let older people near heavy equipment. And I'm sorry, it's one of those things that to me as a viewer would have made a huge difference.